Someone, please help. Help my daughter. In the midst of the chaotic accident scene, a particularly loud scream echoed. When I looked in that direction, I saw a woman cradling a collapsed girl, desperately calling for help. Call an ambulance quickly. The mother got clearly panicked and she was already in a state of hysteria. I had been a doctor until recently, but I had quit for various reasons. I had returned to my hometown for a fireworks festival when this accident happened. Many people were screaming, "It hurts, help me." In that chaos, I approached the woman and checked on her daughter's condition. However, this encounter would significantly change my life. "Doctor, thank you for your hard work. Good job." I had just finished a laparoscopic surgery for an inguinal hernia and left the medical office to get a checkup. My name is David Smith. As a pediatric surgeon, I have performed numerous operations at this hospital. What were the results? The CT scan confirms it's a dissecting aneurysm. I see. I had always suffered from frequent headaches. Headaches were a regular occurrence for me, and I had become accustomed to living with them. However, recently, the pain had increased frequently, and since entering my 30s, I experienced headaches at least twice a week. Treating them with painkillers while examining the children. But as the pain became more persistent, I had my cardiologist colleague, Dr. John Williams, examine me, and that was the diagnosis. You've been too busy lately. Aren't you overworking yourself? The situation in the pediatric department was challenging, with many female doctors leaving due to childbirth or marriage. Recently, another pediatrician left for maternity leave, increasing my workload even more. I was aware of my health deteriorating, but with the shortage of doctors, taking a break was out of the question. I'm telling you, this hospital will soon close its pediatric ward. You should consider stepping away for a bit. The hospital had decided to close the pediatric ward due to financial constraints. Discussions were already underway to eliminate the pediatric department entirely. Some pediatricians had already left, knowing this, and either moved to other hospitals or started their own practices. Those remaining were also contemplating their next steps. Yeah. I think I'll step away for now. I was among them, deciding to leave due to my health. In June that year, the board officially decided to close the pediatric ward in April of the following year. I resigned at the end of March. With the nationwide shortage of pediatricians, I received offers from various places but politely declined, wanting to take a break from the field. I decided to return to my hometown to think about my future. It's been years since I took a train. I usually traveled by car, so riding the train was a rare occurrence. Especially the current high-speed train, which I hadn't ridden in decades. As I rested my elbow on the window seat and gazed at the swiftly changing scenery, memories of the past resurfaced. David, you should become a doctor in the future. You need to get into a medical school with a high national exam pass rate. There's no time to waste. I had always excelled academically in my hometown, so my parents and the adults around me would say, "You'll be a doctor in the future." And I naturally began aiming for medical school. How did it go? I passed. Really? That's great. On my way back from reporting my high school acceptance, I ran into my classmate, Emily, and told her the news. Now you'll become a doctor, David. It's still uncertain, there's the national exam to pass first. With your abilities, David, you'll definitely pass. However, even after getting into medical school, I struggled with whether this was truly the right path for me. Just because I excelled academically didn't mean I had a strong sense of justice or mission. I had chosen this path merely because my parents had suggested it. Was it right for me to take on a job where I would be responsible for people's lives? I actually want to be a veterinarian. But my parents insist that I have to be a doctor. You love animals, David. How's Whiskers? Oh, he's completely spoiled by my mom. Haha, is that so? If being a doctor doesn't suit me, I have nothing else. People only praise me because of my grades. In reality, no one cares about me. Without a strong desire to be a doctor, I often wondered what would be left for me if this path didn't work out. Ever since I decided to pursue medicine, I constantly pondered these thoughts. David, you'd make a great doctor. Remember when I got injured and you helped me? You were so reliable. I think people would feel safe with a kind doctor like you. She had tripped while running by the river during track practice, and I had happened to be nearby and gave her basic first aid. She still appreciated that moment. Are you going to get a job? With your grades, you could easily get into a national college. Maybe you should reconsider your path? No, I've thought it through. Thank you for your concern, Mr. Johnson. Our high school was one of the top schools in the area. Emily, a top student, had chosen to work immediately after graduation to support her single mother. If you want to do something else later, you can think about it then. If you want to come back, you can. People like you not just because of your grades but because they enjoy being around you. She was always so grounded. Unlike me, constantly second-guessing myself, she never wavered from her decisions. I had always been drawn to her steadfastness and her cheerful, sun-kissed face. But back then, I didn't have the courage to express my feelings and pretended to only care about my studies. Remembering those days, I wondered how Emily was doing now as I watched the scenery pass by. It's been so many years. Not much has changed. I exited the ticket gate at my hometown station and looked around. The video rental store I used to visit was gone, but everything else in the Rotary was just as I remembered. It took about 40 minutes on foot to get from the station to my parents' house. I walked slowly, reminiscing about the familiar scenery. This is where I found Whiskers. I approached the small forest on the nostalgic path. In high school, I had found a stray kitten, Whiskers, in this forest. Bringing home a stray kitten. What if it's sick? You need to take it back. I begged my parents to let me keep the kitten I had brought home, but they were initially strongly opposed. However, I couldn't abandon the tiny kitten that fit in the palm of my hand, so I persisted in asking to keep it. Eventually, my relentless pleading wore them down. And they reluctantly agreed to let me keep the kitten on the condition that I took full responsibility for its care. Mom, is dinner ready yet? Wait a little longer. I'm cooking now. Mom, why are you still holding Whiskers? I'm hungry. Shh. Be quiet. Whiskers is sleeping right now. Whiskers was happily resting on my mom's lap, enjoying being petted under the chin. Less than a year after we started keeping the kitten, my mom fell completely in love with Whiskers and took over its care. Mom, you told me to take care of it, but now you won't even let me touch it. You used to tell me not to let it into the living room. And now you watch it run around the house with a smile. People can really change, can't they? Whiskers lived happily in our home for over 10 years, spoiled by my mom. During my busy internship, Whiskers passed away. I found out from an unexpected early morning call from my mom. Mom, what is it? It's so early, I was up late last night and I'm still sleepy. Sniff. David. Whiskers passed away. I remember my mom crying on the phone for several minutes. She called early that morning, crying her heart out. As I reminisced about those old days, I realized I had arrived at my parents' house. Welcome home. You got here sooner than I expected. My mother, who greeted me, had more white hair and a slightly hunched back. She seemed to have aged a bit since Whiskers passed away. Where's Dad? He's at work right now. Though my father had retired, he continued working on a re-employment basis, constantly complaining about the significant pay cut. From that day on, I decided to relax at my parents' house for a while. By the way, David, isn't Robert your classmate? He opened a cafe last year. You should drop by if you have time. Robert? He opened a cafe? Robert was a high school classmate and a good friend for the first and second years. Unlike me, who wasn't in any clubs, he was a short-distance runner in the track team and incredibly fast. I'll go check it out and see how he's doing as a cafe owner. With a laugh, I left my parents' house and walked leisurely to Robert's cafe. Is this the place? Haha, what a stylish shop, doesn't seem like him at all. I opened the door with a strawberry red exterior and a harmonized wooden door, triggering an antique doorbell to chime. Welcome. The voice that greeted me from the counter is Robert, now looking like a grown man. Long time no see. How have you been? You? David, is that you? Wow, it's been ages. Hey, Ashley. It's David. David's here. Wow, David, long time no see. You've grown up. Ashley, another classmate, emerged from the back. We had been particularly close in high school, often hanging out together. Ashley? Wow, you haven't changed at all. Right? Still as pretty as ever, don't you think? Yeah, you're right. Haha, if you haven't changed, it means you haven't grown at all. What? Like I don't want to hear that from someone with a receding hairline. What did you say? Seeing this scene reminded me of the past. In high school, the two of you always fought, and we always had to step in to stop you. Emily and I. By the way, since you two are together, does that mean? Yeah, we got married. She insisted on staying by my side, so I had no choice. Oh really? Who was it again that said we'd walk hand in hand even when we were old? Even back then, it was obvious that the two of them liked each other, despite their constant bickering in the classroom. They couldn't express their feelings honestly, so they communicated through their arguments instead. In a way, I envied that. I couldn't express my feelings, nor could I argue. I always pretended not to care about the one I liked. Hey, there's a fireworks festival by the riverbank tomorrow. Let's go together. Wow, they're still holding that festival? Yes, we go every year. Come with us, David. Oh, I have something nostalgic for you. Ashley went to the back of the shop and brought out a photo. Look, remember this? It was a photo from the high school fireworks festival, showing the four of us. Next to Emily in her summer dress, I was smiling awkwardly. Back then, the four of us went to many places. You two always stopped us from fighting. By the way, David, why didn't you meet Emily on graduation day? Oh. I had to meet one of my dad's acquaintances. I forgot about it. That reason was true, but in a way, it was also a lie. I wanted to go that day, but I was afraid to face reality and used my father's appointment as an excuse to run away. As these memories flooded back, the events of that day replayed in my mind. David, can you make some time today? I think I can. Okay, I'll be by the riverbank. In truth, I didn't care about meeting my dad's acquaintance, I wanted to see Emily. Dad, can I go out for a bit today? I have something to do. What are you talking about? The son of my acquaintance is your senior at the college you're attending. We're going to get some information. Hurry up and get ready. It'll only take a little while. Don't make me repeat myself. Hurry up. One reason was that I simply couldn't defy my father back then. Emily waited alone until 8 p.m. that night, thinking she had to tell you how she felt or she'd never get another chance. What? I remember the meeting was supposed to be in the afternoon. She waited that long? I was so mad that you stood Emily up, David. I went to your house several times. I remembered my mom mentioning something during my internship. I had moved away to attend a distant college right after high school. Ashley often came to my house asking for my whereabouts. But my mom, thinking it would disrupt my studies, never told her. Back then, if we had the convenience of phones like we do now, I could have explained why I couldn't meet Emily. So, what's Emily up to now? She got a job right after graduation and had a shotgun wedding with someone she met at work, but they soon divorced. And it's all your fault. David! Hey, cut it out. David had his reasons. But it's true. A shotgun wedding? Hearing that phrase made my blood run cold. Emily was really down after not seeing you at graduation. She met someone at her job who was kind to her, and they started dating. Ashley looked down, hesitant to continue. She got pregnant a few months into the relationship. She even came to me for advice, but I didn't know what to say, so I told Robert instead. I felt an intense shock. Hearing about the shotgun wedding and pregnancy made my chest tighten with pain. They got married quickly, but the guy turned out to be a player. He was cheating and even hit her. They divorced within 6 months. As Ashley said, maybe it was really my fault. For such a solid person like Emily to let someone like that into her life. Emily came back 3 years ago and lives here with her child. Her kid goes to an arts high school. So she's here. We've only seen her once since then and haven't met again. Since she's been working hard as a single mother to support her high schooler, we've been mindful and haven't reached out to her. You probably have a lot on your mind, but she's doing her best. Just leave her be. Yeah, I understand. By the way, doctors make good money, right? Our cafe keeps us busy but doesn't make much. We started this cafe because we wanted to, not to make money. But I'd like to travel abroad. Come on. As usual, the couple started bickering, and I stepped in to mediate. Then came the day of the fireworks festival. Robert, Ashley, and I went to the riverbank. It's just as crowded as ever. Maybe more than last year. This normally spacious riverside was now packed with people. Hey, I want a cotton candy. You've always liked that, haven't you? As night fell, the lanterns lit up the festival stalls. Amidst the laughter of people and the lively shouts of vendors, the three of us enjoyed the festival atmosphere while eating cotton candies. The best view is from that bridge, but it looks like that's not an option today. Robert looked disappointed as he saw that the bridge was already crowded with people. Let's sit here. Ashley quickly claimed a spot on the riverbank just big enough for the three of us. Maybe I should have bought some beer. Should I go get some now? It's too late now, let's do it later. As they were talking, a sudden, deafening boom echoed, sending a shockwave through our bodies. Countless sparks exploded in all directions, lighting up the entire area. The crowd erupted in cheers. No matter how old I get, the sound never gets old. As Robert watched the fireworks, Ashley nestled close to him. You two get along pretty well, don't you? I smiled as I watched their happy faces illuminated by the fireworks. David, why don't you come over for dinner tonight? Ashley's cooking is pretty good. Come on, flattery won't get you anywhere. Suddenly, the sounds of people screaming filled the air. Ah! Oh my God! What's going on? We looked towards the source of the noise and saw that a stall near the bridge had been blown apart. Flames were rising from some of the stalls. I saw it. A firework shot sideways and hit that stall. A witness was shouting about what had happened. Later investigations revealed that a misfired firework had exploded sideways from its tube, hitting the stalls near the bridge. Looking at the bridge, I saw several people lying on the ground. I'm going over there. I pushed through the panicked crowd towards the bridge. Excuse me, please let me through. When I finally reached the bridge, I found debris scattered everywhere and many people lying injured. Ouch, ouch, it hurts, it hurts. Her clothes are on fire. Somebody help putting it out. What are you doing? Call an ambulance. There were people bleeding from their faces, some desperately trying to extinguish the flames on their clothes, and others who seemed unconscious from severe head injuries. It was like a scene from hell. Sorry, I'm taking these. I grabbed several large water bottles from a nearby stall and poured water on a burned child. With so many injured, I didn't know where to start, so I decided to help the children first. It hurts so much. It's hot, help me. Amidst the groans of pain, I worked frantically. Damn it, there are too many people. I can't handle this alone. David! We'll help too. Robert and Ashley called out as I poured water on a child's burns. Thanks. Robert, check on the people who aren't moving and see if they're conscious. Ashley, bring all the water bottles you can find. Got it. I'll go get it. Other bystanders also started helping on their own. Someone, please help. My daughter. My daughter got injured. A woman's voice shouted loudly amidst the chaotic scene. Looking in that direction, I saw a woman holding a collapsed girl, desperately calling for help. Where did it hit? Her arm. Her arm is burning. When I sat down in front of the girl to examine her arm, I saw that the high school-aged girl's right arm was swollen and red, with the skin blackened and charred. This burn. It's severe. I looked around for something to use. Then I spotted some unused aluminum foil that had been blown from a stall. Ah, it hurts. It hurts so much. Just hang in there for a moment. Since the burn was extensive, I used the aluminum foil to perform a makeshift dressing to prevent infection. Oh no, what if her arm stops working? We need an ambulance. Samantha. The The mother got clearly panicked and she was already in a state of hysteria. "Ma'am, please calm down. Your daughter's burn isn't severe enough to cause her arm to stop working. Who are you? Why are you wrapping her in aluminum? Call an ambulance now." The mother, her hair disheveled, was unable to calm down. "What should I do?" "Samantha. Samantha. David, I got some ice from the shaved ice stand." "Hey. Emily?" Ashley handed me a bag of ice and then called out to the woman by name. "Ashley? Ashley. Samantha is." Emily, holding her daughter and crying uncontrollably. "Emily, David is a doctor. You're in good hands. David." Emily, her face wet with tears, looked at me in shock. "David. Why are you here?" "I'll explain later. For now, we need to get her to the hospital for treatment." Just then, several ambulances arrived, and I went to the hospital with Emily. Upon arrival, Samantha was immediately taken to the operating room for treatment. A few minutes later, Dr. Anderson informed us that she would need to be hospitalized for further treatment. "Is Samantha going to be okay? Will her arm move properly again?" "She'll be fine. There will be scars, but with rehabilitation, she'll regain movement in her arm." Relieved by Dr. Anderson's words, Emily collapsed onto the bench in the hallway. "The burn is severe, but it could have been much worse. If the firework had hit directly. If something happened to Samantha, I wouldn't be able to go on. Thank goodness, really, thank goodness." In the quiet hospital hallway, Emily, hunched over and dejected, looked very different from the healthy image I remembered. She was thin and appeared very fragile. Her daughter must be her only reason to live. During my time as a resident doctor, I encountered many cases like this. I've witnessed the heart-wrenching cries of parents who lost their children despite our efforts. Even though I don't have children, being in those situations made me feel crushed by my own helplessness. "I'm sorry. I didn't recognize you, David, and I said some harsh things." "It's okay. I didn't recognize you either." Anyone would be frantic with their child in that condition. I couldn't think straight and froze up. If you hadn't been there, I would have lost it completely. "Thank you, David. I just did what anyone would do. Let me take you home. You need to prepare for her hospital stay." I called a taxi and took her home. "You must be surprised to see I have such a big kid." In the taxi, Emily suddenly started to talk. "I had a child with a guy I met at work after graduating. We got married quickly, but he had a cheating habit. We divorced within a year. Since then, it's just been me and my daughter." I remembered Emily saying she wanted to get a job right after high school to support her mother. "How's your mom?" "She passed away 3 years ago. She moved in with me after my divorce, but she got sick. By the time we found out, it was too late." Seeing her so lonely brought back memories of the past. "Emily, are you going to college?" "No, I'm going to get a job. I want to become a sports trainer and surprise my mom by working with famous athletes." Back then, Emily was on the track and field team with Robert and was a long jumper. She wanted to become a trainer to make her sports-loving mother happy. She was always tanned, active, and cheerful. But now, Emily looked like a woman exhausted by life. The sparkle she once had was completely gone. She must have been through a lot. "Hey, if there's anything I can do to help, don't hesitate to ask. I'm planning to stay at my parents' place for a while." "What?" I told her I would support her, but I couldn't look her in the eyes and turned to gaze out the window. "David, you visited me again?" "Yeah, I was worried about you, Samantha." "How is she?" "It still hurts, but I can lift my arm a bit now." "Look." "Ouch." Hey, don't overdo it. It's not fully healed yet." "Ha ha." Samantha scratched her head with her other arm, wincing from the pain of moving too quickly. Since Emily worked hard during the day, I frequently visited Samantha in the hospital. "I'm terrible at math. Can I stop now?" "Nope. Even if you're missing school, you need to learn the basics. Plus, math is used in art too, so you need to master it to create good work." "Art doesn't use math." While Samantha was hospitalized, I tutored her during my visits. But she often grumbled when it came to her least favorite subjects. David, thank you so much. Samantha seems to be smiling more these days. She says she's happy you help her with her studies. Haha, she complains but still studies. Knowing I was the one who helped her, Samantha seemed to have opened up to me. I often updated Emily on Samantha's progress after she finished work. Whenever I visit her in the hospital, she always talks about you. She asks about your favorite foods, your favorite books, and what kind of women you like. I just listen and nod since I know you pretty well. Haha, everything I tell Samantha gets reported back to you. Emily, really, if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. I'm here for you. Thanks. Just having you nearby gives me strength. It really helps a lot. Looking into Emily's eyes at that moment, my heart raced and I felt my feelings for her growing stronger. Hey, Samantha? One day, as I visited Samantha, I found her sitting on a bench outside. You're out today? The weather is nice. It feels good to get some fresh air, right? But for some reason, she seemed down. I noticed she had a notebook in her hand, probably for drawing. Oh, you're already practicing drawing again. That's great. I sat beside her, but she didn't look up. Hey, what's wrong? Are you worried about something? I can't do it anymore. My drawings are terrible, and I can't apply any strength. What if I can't draw anymore? What will I do then? She showed me her drawing, which didn't meet her expectations. This realization had deeply shocked her, filling her with anxiety. If this continues, she might end up not going back to school or worse, falling into depression. You don't need to rush. With proper rehabilitation, your strength will return. You'll be able to draw plenty once you're back in school. I am doing it. But rehab is so painful that I can't keep up. I see. Rehab must be really tough for her. Drawing is what makes school fun for me. If I can't draw, no one will pay attention to me at school. I tell Mom I'm okay with a smile. But I know I won't be able to go to college. I can't do it anymore. Trying not to worry Emily, she must have forced herself to smile until now. She broke down, burying her face in her hands and crying. Samantha originally loved drawing and had entered an art-focused high school aiming to get into an art college. Her strong-willed behavior to avoid worrying her mother reminded me of how Emily was in high school. Even when she wasn't feeling well, Emily never skipped activities and pretended to be fine so her mother wouldn't worry. They really are mother and daughter. I'll help you until you can draw properly again. Let's work hard together, okay? I'll help with the rehab too. Besides, everyone likes you not just because you can draw, but because they enjoy being with you. Don't worry, everything will be all right. I found myself using the same words Emily had once said to me to encourage Samantha. You'll do the rehab with me? Yes. I'll be by your side until you can move your arm again. Let's do this together, okay? Okay. At that moment, I had no idea that Emily was watching us from the shade of a nearby tree. Ah. All right, keep going. Just 3 more times. Since then, Samantha had been working hard on her rehabilitation. She no longer said negative things and continued her rehab diligently. Watching her struggle through the pain to lift her arm, I found myself encouraged by her determination. I felt my desire to work with children as a doctor once again growing stronger. Congratulations on your discharge, Samantha. Congratulations, Samantha. Thank you. Blushing and smiling shyly, Samantha got into the taxi with Emily and me. Her rehab had gone well, and although the burn scars remained, her arm could move as it did before. From now on, she'll only need outpatient care. This means I won't have a reason to see Emily as often. Let's celebrate your discharge today. Samantha, you can choose whatever you want to eat. Really? Yay! We went to an Italian restaurant at Samantha's request, and while we waited for our food, we had some light conversation. Were you and Mom close in high school? Did you ever think about dating her? Whoa! What are you saying all of a sudden? Samantha's sudden question almost made me spit out my water. I think you two would be a good match. Stop saying silly things, or I'll really get mad. Seeing Emily turn bright red, Samantha grinned mischievously. Hey, our food is here. Let's eat. Changing the subject, huh? I quickly diverted attention to the food that had arrived. After a while, Samantha brought up another surprising topic. I want David to be my dad. David, how do you feel about my mom? What? Gasp. Emily made a strange noise while I almost choked on my pasta. Looking at Samantha with teary eyes from my mishap, I saw her staring at me seriously. My mom talks about you with such joy. I've never seen her so happy before. I think she must like you. Since I don't have a dad, I thought it would be great if you could be my dad. So, what do you think? Both Emily and I were speechless, our faces turning red. Samantha's words gave me the courage I needed. I decided to face Emily and speak up. If you can forgive me for what happened back then. Just as I began to speak, a sudden, intense pain shot through my head. This pain was different, far worse than usual. David? What's wrong? Mom! He collapsed. With a loud crash of a falling plate, I collapsed to the floor. David! David! After that, I lost consciousness. When I came to, I found myself lying in a hospital bed. An IV was attached to my arm, and my head throbbed slightly. Looking around, it seemed I was in a private room. David? Then, I saw Emily's face peering down at me. Emily, what happened to me? You collapsed at the restaurant. I didn't know what to do. Apparently, I had passed out at the restaurant and had been brought to the same hospital where Samantha was admitted. The doctor said you'll be fine if you rest for a while. Thank goodness. I was so scared of what might happen to you. I've had a condition with my head for a while, so you don't need to cry so much. Emily's tears kept streaming down her face, and she sobbed uncontrollably. You cried when I told you about Whiskers passing away too. You were saying something at the restaurant. What was it? Emily, her eyes red from crying, asked me. There's nothing to be afraid of anymore. Don't let it end in regret. Just tell her how you feel. I urged myself inwardly to express my feelings clearly. I've been attracted to you since high school, Emily. But I never had the courage to tell you. If you can forgive me for what happened back then, I'd like to stay by your side. Emily started crying again, unable to speak. You don't have to decide right away. When you're ready, let me know. Oh, right, it's hard to decide anything while I'm in this state. Have you woken up, David? I looked towards the voice and saw Dr. Anderson and Samantha entering the room. Your condition is temporary, so don't worry. I've already explained everything to you, and it's not serious. Once you've recovered, please join us as a part-time doctor. Yes, thank you. As Dr. Anderson and I talked, Samantha whispered something to Emily. David is going to be a doctor here. Here? During Samantha's rehab, I had spoken with Dr. Anderson about working at this hospital. Given the shortage of pediatricians, the hospital was eager to have me, and the arrangements had been made quickly. That's great, Mom. David just confessed to you, didn't he? What? You heard of it? Sorry, we didn't mean to eavesdrop, but Samantha wouldn't let me into the room, so we overheard. Realizing that both Samantha and Dr. Anderson had overheard our conversation at the door, Emily and I fell silent with embarrassment. All right, next. Oh, ha ha. Okay, call her in. Samantha. When the nurse called, Samantha opened the door and entered the examination room. Samantha, you're in college now. You can go to a regular dermatologist. My doctor is Dr. Smith, and that's fine with me. Samantha, smiling, showed she could move her arm as before. As a result for her hard work, she had been accepted into an art college. Art colleges are more expensive than regular ones. Although I offered to pay for her tuition from my savings, Emily insisted on using her own savings, along with the money left by her mother. to cover the costs. Let me do something for you too. So now, I'm helping support their living expenses. After Samantha was discharged, she underwent skin graft surgery at a college hospital through my connections. Now, she comes to me for follow-up checkups. Let's arrange for another checkup at the college hospital next month. Yes, Dr. Smith. Also, I'm sure you know, but today is Mom's birthday. I know. I'll come home as early as possible, so keep the preparations a secret from your mom. Okay. Leave it to me. With a happy smile, Samantha left the examination room. You have a lovely daughter. Yes, she's become quite the talker lately, always getting the better of me. After I was discharged from the hospital, I once again conveyed my feelings to Emily. I've always loved you too. Holding Emily quietly, I decided never to regret anything again. Although Samantha says she's fine with us getting together now, we've agreed to make it official once she becomes independent. Please call the next patient. Yes, doctor. At night, picturing Emily's face smiling happily after receiving her gift, I switched my mind to the pediatrician. I placed the stethoscope on the belly of a crying baby. What? Where are my clothes? You stripped me naked. You saw my body. How could you? Oh no. I was at the company's year-end barbecue. I went to look for the company president's secretary, Emily, who had disappeared, and found her drowning in the river. I quickly took off her clothes. To prevent her body temperature from dropping, put my jacket on her and held her lightly, rubbing her back. After a while, she slowly opened her eyes, but when she saw me, she started to struggle. No! Let me go! Let go of me! She shouted as she hit me on the head. Although she regained consciousness, it seemed there was some misunderstanding. A few days later, I was called to the president's office. As I entered, Mr. Johnson, the president, looked at me solemnly and said, "You need to take responsibility for knowing her secret." Understood? His words made me turn pale. The train will be arriving on platform 3. Please stand behind the yellow line. Wearing an unfamiliar suit, I waited for the train as the announcement played and the train approached. My recent workout seemed to be paying off, as the suit felt a bit tight around the chest. Today is my first day at the new company I was recently hired at. I can't wait to see what new experiences await me. I worked hard during my 4 years at university to gain the necessary knowledge in my field, and finally got a job offer just before graduation. As the train doors opened, a crowd of people exited. Those waiting on the platform boarded one after the other, and I was pushed to the center of the crowded train. The train was packed. I've heard about the rush hour, but this is tougher than I imagined. Pressed in by the crowd and unable to move, I locked eyes with a man standing diagonally in front of me. I hadn't done anything, yet he kept staring at me. I stared back at him, and eventually, he looked away. I have a rule. When I make eye contact with someone, I never look away first. Even though I'm in my early 20s, I never back down from anyone. I always stay unemotional, strong both mentally and physically, and never compromise. That's my way of life. I started working out in college to build my body for this reason. I've never been interested in other people. I have no close friends and am used to being alone. This was largely influenced by a certain person. He was an actor, now deceased. I wanted to be more like him, so I wandered around the city wearing clothes similar to what he used to wear in his old shows. Additionally, I related to the life depicted in his starring films and started reading the original novels, becoming deeply immersed in the hard-boiled world. In middle school, while the boys talked about games and anime, and the girls shared pop star gossip and magazines, I always felt sick watching them. Same old stories every day. Pathetic. Annoyed by the noise, I'd read a book through the boring break times. Being a loner in class, I never sucked up to the popular kids, which made them dislike me. But on the other hand, some girls seemed to find my defiant attitude appealing and I had a certain level of popularity. However, I wasn't interested in the girls in my class, and I reluctantly dated a few who confessed to me just to get them off my back. Naturally, those relationships didn't last long. Even when dating, I wouldn't initiate conversations during breaks, and only went out on dates when invited by them. I never made an effort to spend time together. As I continued these kinds of relationships, the girls began to express their dissatisfaction. I'm glad you're not a people pleaser, but it's sad not being treated special. As these complaints grew, my reputation as a cold guy spread, and eventually, no more girls approached me. In high school, I started working part-time, and saved up to buy a leather outfit and sunglasses. I got a perm and mimicked everything, from his way of speaking to his mannerisms. At that time, I was completely immersed in becoming my idol actor. I wore sunglasses to school even in high school. I secretly got a motorcycle license without telling my parents and planned to commute on it, but they found out just before I bought the bike. I had already broken school rules and had been frequently reprimanded by my homeroom teacher for my behavior, which caused my mother to face a lot of criticism from our relatives. Your son is a misfit. You completely failed at parenting. My mother would cry and berate me. How can you act so nonchalant? Do you have any idea how I feel every day? But her words didn't affect me at all, and I chose to ignore her. In an effort to help, my father often took me to counseling sessions, but the response was always the same, nothing abnormal. Just a personality issue, with no solutions offered. By the time I graduated from high school, my parents had completely given up and avoided interacting with me. There was someone who moved me emotionally for the first time. It was Owen Johnson, the CEO of a certain IT startup. In his 30s, he was renowned for his vast knowledge and impressive skills, rapidly growing his company and earning a reputation as one of the best in the industry. Mr. Johnson once said in an interview with some magazine, "A man should relentlessly pursue his dreams." That's how I got to where I am today. I was captivated by his words and deeply wanted to work under him. At the same time, I saw in him a way of life I aspired to. From his perspective, what I'm doing probably looks like a child's fantasy. When I'm in front of him, I can't help but feel immature. I wanted to learn about life as a man from him. With a strong desire to be recognized by him, I dedicated myself to my work. The company had a small but highly skilled team, and everyone seemed exceptionally capable. However, I was only interested in Mr. Johnson and focused on my own pace of work. Because Mr. Johnson aimed for a friendly workplace, no senior employees criticized my unsociable nature. Mr. Johnson was close to all the employees and often hosted social gatherings, which everyone voluntarily attended, showing their admiration for him. There was always a crowd around him, leaving no room for me. But I believed that as long as I was recognized for my work, it didn't matter if I couldn't get close to him outside of work. That initial mindset began to change due to a certain presence. A few months after joining the company, Mr. Johnson hired a young and beautiful secretary named Emily. Since her arrival, Mr. Johnson never left her side, making it impossible for me to get closer to him, and I couldn't help but see her as a nuisance. Moreover, Mr. Johnson called her by her first name, Emily. They were always together, sparking rumors among the employees that they were dating. In December, Mr. Johnson invited us to his vacation home for a year-end party. A senior colleague mentioned that this trip was an annual tradition, and that the company owned the vacation home as part of employee benefits. As a first-timer, I was thrilled. Staying at a vacation home? Awesome! On the day of the party, employees with cars gathered at the meeting point, giving rides to others. As usual, I showed up in a leather outfit, riding a cruiser I bought on loan. The employees were captivated by the sound of my bike as I arrived. "Robert, is that you?" I thought it was a biker gang. "Looking good, Robert." "Wow, you look so different," I was surprised. Ignoring the admiring comments, I approached Mr. Johnson. "Good to see you, sir." "Wow, you're looking sharp. That outfit suits you." "Thank you." Emily was still beside him as usual. Is she glued to him since morning? It seems I'm not the only one thinking that. The female employee who adored Mr. Johnson, along with her juniors, looked at Emily with suspicion. Those three are always cold to Emily. Since she joined the company, Emily has been trying to get along with the female employees, actively speaking to them whenever they meet. However, these three respond curtly or sometimes ignore her completely. Among them, the leader, a woman in her 30s, sees Emily as an enemy. "Why is she in Mr. Johnson's car? It ruins my morning." She glares at Emily from a distance, filled with hostility. I can't stand this petty drama between women, I thought, glancing at the three as I got on my bike. This secluded vacation home, surrounded by distant mountains, had a cool, refreshing atmosphere. The employees parked their cars and started unloading their belongings. I looked over to see Mr. Johnson escorting Emily into the vacation home with his hand on her back. Is he really infatuated with such a young woman? Feeling a bit disappointed, I started unloading the barbecue supplies from a senior colleague's car. After putting my belongings in the assigned room, I had some time before the barbecue, so I decided to take a walk around the area. The leaves on the surrounding trees rustled with the wind, creating a peaceful ambience alongside the chirping birds. As I walked, I heard the sound of flowing water ahead. Standing by the riverbank, the gentle flow of the river and the birds' songs were soothing to my ears. Just being by the river refreshed my mind. After spending some time by the river, I returned to the vacation home to help prepare for the barbecue. As evening approached and the birds quieted down, the barbecue began. I was in charge of grilling, continuously cooking everyone's food on the grill. Everyone was enjoying themselves, chatting cheerfully with drinks in hand. I wanted to talk to Mr. Johnson outside of work, but he was, of course, surrounded by the female employees, so I couldn't. Mr. Johnson is as popular as ever, a senior employee muttered beside me, as I continued grilling meat. After a while, Mr. Johnson's phone rang, and he stepped into the vacation home while talking on it. A few minutes after he left, I noticed the three female employees who had been glaring at Emily earlier were now talking to her. Curious, I watched as they talked for a while before the four of them disappeared somewhere. The other employees didn't notice their absence and continued partying. Once I finished my grilling duties, I waited for Mr. Johnson to return, but he didn't seem to be coming back, so I decided to take a walk around. As I walked through the forest, the branches and leaves were illuminated by the moonlight, creating a fantastical atmosphere. Walking in the moonlit forest isn't bad, I thought as I reached the river bank again. The river at night, with the bright moon shining, spread its light over the riverbank. I put my hands in my pockets and closed my eyes, listening to the sound of the river. But then, it happened. I heard a voice from somewhere. Peering closely in the direction of the voices, I saw the four women arguing. Coming all the way out here, this is why I can't stand women. My peaceful moment of relaxation ruined, I angrily returned to the vacation home. When I got back to the barbecue area, Mr. Johnson was already there, chatting with the other employees. I sat down and ate my meat, which has gotten cold as the trio returned. They sat away from Mr. Johnson, looking somewhat downcast. Did they leave Emily behind? This is why I dislike women. Thinking that, I throw a charred vegetable down my mouth. Let's wrap this up and move to the rooms for drinks. As night deepened, Mr. Johnson's words prompted the employees to start cleaning up. As everyone worked together to tidy up, Mr. Johnson seemed to notice that Emily was missing. Where's Emily? He asked, looking around. The other employees looked around, but Emily was nowhere to be seen. The area was dimly lit by moonlight. The employees were moved by Mr. Johnson's voice to search for Emily as they split up and dispersed in all directions. As I started to walk to join the search, I noticed the three women. They seemed to be whispering about something. They know something. I thought for a moment but continued my search for Emily. Under the moonlight, I remembered the four of them were at the riverbank. This was the place. I ran towards the river and looked around the rocks where they had been. Then, I saw something floating in the stagnant pool downstream. Squinting, I realized it was a person. I hurriedly ran over the boulders towards the water. There was Emily, floating on her back. You've got to be kidding me. I quickly kicked off my shoes and leather jacket and dove into the water. Hey! Hang in there! I carried Emily to the riverbank and pulled her out of the water. But she was unconscious. I began unbuttoning her clothes and put my jacket on her to keep her warm. But my hands froze for a moment. What? What is this? Emily's body was covered with an overwhelming number of scars that made me want to look away. Her abdomen had countless cuts, and her chest and shoulders were marked with numerous welts. Her shoulders had many red marks that looked like burns. I quickly put my jacket on her to keep her warm, lightly hugging her and rubbing her back. What could have happened to her to cause this? As I contemplated whether to perform CPR, Emily slowly opened her eyes. "Are you okay, Emily?" She seemed disoriented, staring blankly at my face. Luckily, the depth of the pool allowed her to be saved, but it could have been much worse. When Emily realized she was in my arms, she suddenly started struggling. "What? No. Let go. Let me go," she shouted, hitting my head repeatedly. "Hey. Wait. Calm down. It's a misunderstanding. Relax." As I held her wrist to calm her down, she noticed she was wearing my jacket. "What? Where are my clothes?" "No, no. No." She cried harder and struggled more violently, so I let her go. "You stripped me naked. You saw my body. I put my jacket on you right away. I only saw a little. I didn't stare. You're the worst. Ooh-wah." She suddenly burst into tears and started hitting me again. "I had no intention of doing anything to you. I just didn't want you to drown. But, you didn't have to strip me. It's too much. It's awful. Ooh-wah." Thinking how troublesome this was, I picked Emily up in a bridal carry. "Ah. What are you doing? Let me go. You're so noisy. We're going back to the cabin." I carried the struggling Emily in my arms and walked back to the cabin. When I arrived at the cabin, wearing just a t-shirt and carrying the flailing Emily, the employees all stared at me in shock. "What happened to you, Emily?" Then, Mr. Johnson came running over, shouting. I quickly explained what had happened, and he hugged Emily and thanked me. "Thank you for saving Emily." He said that, and then took Emily to the hospital, driving away with her. After that, the mood for drinking in the room dissipated, and we decided to head home the next day. "Excuse me, can we talk?" I called out to the leader of the three women and led her to the side of the cabin. "What do you want to talk about?" She was clearly nervous, so I decided to probe. "I saw what happened." "Why did you do that to Emily?" "Because of you, she fell into the river." "I won't tell anyone, just explain it to me." As I coldly pressed her, she began to recount the events hesitantly. Jealous of Emily for always being close to Mr. Johnson, she and two other colleagues plotted to separate them during the year-end party. When Mr. Johnson stepped away during the barbecue, they took Emily to the river and demanded she break up with him. "I'm not dating him. There's a significant age difference, and you're misunderstanding. Don't play dumb. You're always hanging around him. You're so presumptuous for a newcomer." As they pressured her, Emily stepped back in fear, slipped, and fell into the river. "Help! Glub! Help! Please help!" Emily flailed her arms, desperately calling for help. The three women panicked as they watched her struggle and drift downstream. "Maybe she can't swim? I don't care. She fell in on her own." The leader fled, and the other two followed, running away. "You left her drowning? What do you think a person's life is worth? Enough is enough. I'm sorry." When I glared at her, the terrified senior collapsed to the ground and began trembling. "Apologize to her, not to me. Use your own words and apologize properly," I said, leaving her there. Monday. As I commuted to work on the crowded train, everyone except those three women acted as if nothing had happened. I was preparing for work, pulling out my laptop, when a senior colleague told me to go to the president's office. They probably wanted to ask about what happened at the cabin. When I entered the office, Mr. Johnson, with his sharp gaze, asked me to explain the events at the cabin in more detail. Nervously, I recounted everything. But I didn't do anything inappropriate. It was purely a rescue, and I only undressed her to save her life. "But you saw her scars, didn't you?" I nodded reluctantly. "You need to take responsibility for knowing her secret. Understood?" As I turned pale and froze, Mr. Johnson chuckled. "I'm kidding. I know you're not the kind of person who would do anything inappropriate. But I need to clear up any misunderstandings. Emily is my daughter. I was so shocked that my mouth hung open. She's had a tough life. Mr. Johnson began to quietly recount Emily's story. When he was a senior in high school, he had a girlfriend. She lived with her mother, but when her mother remarried, they moved out of state to live with her new husband. Mr. Johnson wanted to continue their relationship long distance, but soon after she moved, he lost contact with her. His calls went unanswered. And eventually, his number was blocked. It ended up being a forced breakup. But soon after moving in with her stepfather, she discovered she was pregnant. She knew it was Mr. Johnson's child but didn't want to trouble him, so she kept it a secret even from her parents. However, as her pregnancy progressed, her parents noticed her growing belly. They persistently asked who the father was, but she refused to tell them. Since she was already over 22 weeks pregnant, she couldn't get an abortion and eventually gave birth. And that child was Emily. Her stepfather couldn't come to terms with the fact that his partner's child was pregnant. As her relationship with her stepfather grew strained, Emily's mother took Emily and left his house. Determined to live as a single mother, she found it incredibly challenging to raise a child and work at the same time, even at her young age. The stress of childcare and work led her to increasingly take out her frustrations on Emily. From here on, it's a rather distressing story Emily told me. Mr. Johnson began recounting Emily's story. When Emily was in elementary school, her mother got a new boyfriend. Though he initially appeared kind, he soon began to abuse Emily. Her mother, not wanting to alienate him, participated in the abuse. By the time Emily reached middle school, her mother had broken up with him. Relieved, Emily thought she was free, but after breaking up with the man, her mother began to spiral and started drinking heavily. She would suddenly become angry and repeatedly hit Emily. Emily was hit so much by her mother that she almost lost the sight in her left eye. Mr. Johnson said quietly, with a sad expression. "I see, that's why Mr. Johnson always stayed close to Emily and escorted her." Emily's mother would almost always start berating her when she was drunk. "I work so hard for you. Do you understand how difficult it is to make a living? I'm not like you, living carelessly. I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry." Whenever something upset her, she would slap Emily's face repeatedly. Emily tried her best to follow her mother's instructions and live quietly to avoid upsetting her, but even then, her mother's temper was unpredictable. "Come here." Saying that, she would grab Emily by the hair and drag her to the bathroom. Horrifyingly, she would push Emily's head into a filled bathtub while still holding her hair. Struggling and gasping for air, Emily would repeatedly apologize, I'm sorry," but her mother never stopped. Eventually, Emily would start choking on the water, coughing violently, which only made her mother slap her face even more. This abuse continued for several years. It became a trauma for her, and to this day, she has a strong fear of water and won't go near any body of water. And those people forced Emily to go to the river. When Emily was in high school, her mother's excessive drinking and exhaustion took a toll on her liver. And she passed away shortly after being hospitalized. Emily learned about Mr. Johnson from her mother's belongings and decided to seek him out for support. He was tormented by the deep sense of loss and guilt upon discovering he had a child and learning that his ex-girlfriend had endured so much to protect him. He quickly took Emily in, trying to make amends by showering her with love and care. When Emily reached adulthood, he hired her as a secretary at his company. After hearing all this, I understood why he was so protective of Emily. Mr. Johnson, usually so resolute and composed, now seemed deeply saddened. Seeing this unusual expression on his face stirred something in me. Remembering how fragile Emily felt when I held her by the river, and imagining the abuse she had endured from her mother made my heart ache unbearably. In high school, I hadn't been moved when a girlfriend cried at our breakup, nor when my behavior made my mother cry, but now, for the first time, I felt a desire to protect someone. Emily probably panicked because you saw the scars she kept hidden. No one else knows about them except me. Those tears Emily shed. How many times has she cried from pain and sadness? Thinking about the endurance and resilience Emily had to muster made me restless. Mr. Johnson, which hospital is Emily in? Are you going to see her? I nodded silently. Thank you. Right now, I'm the only person she trusts enough to talk to. Since you and Emily are close in age, I hope you can be a good companion for her. Just please keep our conversation confidential." I agreed and left the president's office. The next day, I took the afternoon off to visit Emily at the hospital. When I opened the door to her room, Emily was sitting up in bed, reading a book. Noticing me standing at the entrance, she placed the book on the blanket and smiled at me. Despite all the hardships she had faced, Emily's cheerful demeanor was touching. "How are you feeling?" "I'm fine now. The doctor said I can be discharged in 2 or 3 days." Her complexion was good, and her voice was strong. "I'm sorry for saying terrible things after you saved me." "Don't worry about it. Anyone would be startled to see my face right in front of them when they wake up. I'm just glad you're okay." "No, it was my fault for going to the river when it was dark. I'm sorry for the trouble I caused." She didn't mention anything about those 3 women. As I slowly approached her bedside, I noticed the book she had been reading. "Do you like that author?" When I mentioned the author, she looked at the book and started to talk. "Yes, I like stories that make me cry, and his novels often do that, so I read them a lot," she answered shyly. Emily was probably relating these family stories to her own life. Then, in a small voice, Emily spoke while looking at the book. "My father told you about me. It must be disgusting, right? A body covered in scars like mine." I couldn't bear to see her looking so sad. "I don't think it's disgusting at all. From now on, I'll always be by your side. You won't have to feel lonely anymore. You can count on me." She stared at me in silence, her mouth slightly open. "Idiot. What am I saying?" "Oh, I mean, just that, whenever you need someone to talk to when you're feeling down. That's all, no deep meaning behind it." As I fumbled to explain, she started to laugh. "Thank you, I'm happy. But Robert, your face is red." When she smiled and pointed out my red face, I couldn't stop my face from growing even hotter. From that moment on, my cold and indifferent demeanor began to crumble rapidly. During her hospital stay, the leader of the senior female employees visited Emily, apologized, and later submitted her resignation to Mr. Johnson. Although he tried to stop her, she insisted on leaving, saying she couldn't face Emily anymore. A few days later, Emily was discharged and returned to work. During her recovery, I visited her every day. Even after she was discharged, we went out for meals, shopping, and other outings. I, who had never been interested in others, now found myself constantly thinking about Emily. Are her wounds hurting? Is she feeling down? Is she crying somewhere again? On days I couldn't see her, these thoughts filled my mind. I made up my mind. I mean, would you? What? I can't hear you. My heart was pounding, and I could barely speak. "So, would you go out with me?" I mustered all my courage to confess for the first time at a cafe after work. She was silent for a moment, then smiled shyly and said, "Yes." After confessing to Emily, I reported it to Mr. Johnson. He decided it would be best to inform the employees about his relationship with Emily and our relationship. The female employees were shocked to learn Mr. Johnson had a child. But soon, some of them started vying for the position of his wife. You read this kind of novel too? I thought you only read hard-boiled fiction." Mr. Johnson noticed the novel I had borrowed from her on my desk and asked me. "Yeah, I've been reading these kinds of novels a lot lately." "I see. Robert, could you come to my office for a moment?" Following his lead, I entered the office, where Emily sat at a desk in the corner, smiling at me. "Actually, one of the female employees wants to discuss something with me." Mr. Johnson sighed heavily, looking exhausted. "How many is that now?" "4. Being too approachable with the employees might not be a good idea." I smiled wryly, and he asked me to take his place for the consultation. "Why me? Don't they want to talk to you alone?" "Exactly. Why should Robert go?" Emily suddenly chimed in. "Hey, don't look so scary, both of you." Fine, I'll go." He slumped and left the room. "I don't need 2 mothers, you know." Emily threw that teasing remark at Mr. Johnson's back, and we both smiled as we watched him leave.